Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, well, isn't that interesting? Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I don't know what happened to our introductory here, but anyways, it seems it was a little delayed. Anyways, good morning. I'm welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside, of course, is LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Ted. Are you sure we're on the air?
Yes, we're on air. Everything seems fine, but for some reason the audio was delayed. So, anyways, we'll proceed as normal, and that gives us an extra moment or two. Anyways, let me just remind everybody. Of course, we are live every Tuesday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just to let you to know of the actual time that we're on air. And for those of you that may be tuning in a little bit later in the broadcast, we are. As I said, we are live during the 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern slot. But for those of you that maybe can't join us for the full show or maybe not able to join during that time, if you go to blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf and scroll down to the on-demand section, you can get the audio version, the recorded version there at your leisure. So we appreciate you those tuning in live. It's also available as a podcast at iTunes.com. So go to iTunes.com. Again, type in Women of Golf under the search key, and that will take you to the main page. And again, you can listen to all the recorded versions there. Also, if you're interested in calling into the show, you can do so. We'd love to hear from you at area code 347-945-5855. And also, you can email any questions or comments about the show to womenofgolf@gmail.com. And if you're somebody in the golf profession and maybe you'd like to throw your hat in the ring, if you were, you can reach out to either Cindy or myself. Cindy's email is cindy@cindymillergolf.com, and she will do her best to work you into the schedule. Or you can also reach out to me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit Cindy's website, cindymillergolf.com, to purchase the online program Own Your Game series from her Own Your Game Academy, which we've been talking about here over the last couple of months. But got a great show for you this morning. Cindy, we got a couple of great guests coming on. First, of course, is the senior coordinator at the Symetra Tour for media, Bret Lasky, who we've spoken with a number of times, and he actually helps get some of the Symetra Tour players that we've featured here on the show, arranges a lot of that for us. And then a little bit later on, LPGA professional Kathy Hart-Wood is going to be joining us as well. She's got a new program herself, actually a new website called nowicangolf.com. We're going to talk about that as well. But, Cindy, let me just say this. We're kind of winding down, I think, on the Own Your Game series. We must be getting pretty close to the end, right?
Yes, we are. We only have the post-game left, to be honest with you. And that's
okay.
How do we say, okay, what have I done? We did last week Play Your Game. The greatest players in the world have the ability to focus on the task at hand. And today we're talking about, the post-game. Wise leaders in elite performance all reflect on their performance to understand what they've done well and where they could be improvements. Those who are humble enough to admit their opportunities to improve shall always reach new levels of success.
Right. But, yeah. And Cindy, really the post-game, I think, is equally as important as all the other integral parts that we've talked about, because, it's great to get out there and play. It's great to get out there and practice. But if you don't sort of do a self-evaluation, or if you're working with a golf professional, get them to help you with that evaluation, then you're not going to learn from the mistakes or the areas that you need the most work from. So you need to do that. A lot of people just, head to the 19th hole and maybe have a drink or two or something to eat and then sort of move on and forget about the round. And really, that's a very crucial time to sort of take a self-assessment, if you will, and look at some of the areas and some of the difficulties that you struggled with out on the golf course. And I know that most, if not all, professional golfers do that, and that's why they're so successful.
Well, yeah, because, again, what can I control? I can't control what I shoot. I can control my pre-shot routine. I can control my mindset. I can control my tension. I can control my emotions. I can control my swing if I work on it. So you can't control what anyone else does. You can't control the weather. You can't control what you shoot. But if you do everything in your power stay in the present moment and perform the task at hand, then you need to pat yourself on the back and be happy with your results.
Right, exactly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go a little bit later in the show and that. But yeah, you're exactly right. And you know, it's really everywhere. You know, if you think about this, even in your day-to-day jobs, regardless, irrespective if you're part of the golf profession or not, you know, it's important to do an evaluation of your performance. And that's why they have job reviews and job performance reviews at companies, because they want to be able to, it's not there to pick you apart. It's not there to criticize. It's there to give an honest assessment of what you're doing. And obviously there to point out areas that need improvement. And that's what you want to be able to do on the golf course as well. If you want to be a successful golfer, whether you're playing at a tour level or, you know, your local club championship, you want to be able to evaluate the areas and actually pinpoint the areas that you're weakest in, so that you can work together with your coach or your instructor and work on those areas instead of just, you know, going out there and beating balls on the range every week.
Exactly. And those who, you know, again, it's all about your mindset. Do you really believe you can improve? Do you think you can get better? You know, I had a lady last night who said, you know, my 5 hybrid hates me. I said, yeah, I know. It called me and told me. And, you know, so it's like, come on, really? And so at the end of the lesson, she's pounding it straight. Holy cow, I can hit this club. Well, guess who's holding the club?
Right.
And it's all about personal accountability and responsibility. And if you stop, you know, don't have this fixed mindset that I can't do this. You know, yes, you can. Now, how good can you be? I don't know. I don't know your own personal potential. I know, you know, realistically, there's no way I'm going to be Michelle Wie. Well, how good can Cindy be? Better than she is now, so let's try.
Yeah, and, you know, it's funny that you say that because, and we've all seen this, especially obviously with the amateurs. You don't very seldomly see it with the professionals, but you'll see it with the amateurs a lot. And I must confess, it's you see a lot of males do this, probably more so than females. But you know, a lot of club thumping on the ground, you know, after a bad shot, and they're looking down at this, you know, the driver or whatever it happens to be. It's like, you know, it's their fault. And you're right. I mean, the club's in your hands. You're the one that controls the club. The club doesn't control the shot. You do. And it's just interesting how people make excuses, like your student last night, you know, that 5-wood just doesn't like me, and, you know, this sort of thing. And it's so true. You know, it's exactly true. Hey, but listen, we got to move on here real quick. Bret's on the line here, so we're going to bring him on. Let me just do a quick introduction. Of course, I mentioned to you earlier at the start of the show, Bret Lasky, the senior coordinator of the Symetra Media and LPGA, is on with us this morning. First up, and here's just a little bit about Bret's background. His experiences, of course, is in media, PR, broadcasting, and social media, as well as graphic design. In a 6-year span, he worked in minor league baseball, collegiate or college athletics. He's broadcasted professional baseball for about 5 years, as well as called Division I basketball for another 4 years. He's an experienced sports play-by-play broadcaster with versatility in the areas of media relations, graphic design, and social media. And in 2012, he was named the South Atlantic League Media Relations Director of the Year by league executives and, of course, his peers. And he's now settled down quite nicely as the senior coordinator for the Symetra Tour. So without further delay, let's bring on our special guest this morning, Bret Lasky.
Good morning, Bret.
Hey guys, how are you? That was a really great introduction. Thanks a lot, Ted.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Bret, for all the help that you do in getting some of these great players on the show for us. We truly feel blessed and honored to have them on here, and we're excited to work with them as well, as I'm sure you are in your capacity. Let's go back in history just a little bit, and I'm going to start the conversation here just about some of your background, and then Cindy, you can pick up from there. As I mentioned, you obviously have a lot of experience in baseball and basketball as an announcer. Share a little bit of that experience with us if you can.
Yeah, so I went to college at the University of Maryland, and it was sort of my dream at the time to be a play-by-play voice. You know, just like any kid that grows up watching college football or college basketball or Major League Baseball on, ESPN or any of the big networks. I wanted to be sort of, like a Dick Vitale or, Bob Costas or Mike Tirico or or any of those guys that are big in the industry. So that's what I really wanted to be. So that's what I really wanted to be, and I really enjoyed doing it. I did it in college and got an opportunity to do, a national championship game when Maryland women's basketball won, and they beat Duke in 2006 or 7. And so I got an opportunity to do some really cool things, and then I did it in baseball, and it was a great time.
What do you think, Bret, some of that experience that you've acquired, and I think it's true with anything that we do, I think, our previous experiences help lead to what we're doing in future more often than not. So what do you think some of the experiences that you gained throughout that part of your life helped to prepare you for the position you have now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is working with professional athletes and amateur athletes. So now every day I work with 144 to 156 professional athletes, and it's my job to work with them and help them and be able to have a relationship with them that is one that they trust me and they believe in me, and they think that hopefully they think that I'm beneficial for the tour and for their brand and all that sort of thing. So I think when you're a broadcaster, it's really important to be able to step into a clubhouse and or a locker room and to be able to have the guys believe in you and understand that you've got a job to do, and that they're willing to give you stuff and let you in on stuff, and hopefully you can use the stuff that they let you in on to help the broadcast and to give your listeners or viewers perspective. So I think the biggest thing that I learned is how to deal and treat professional athletes and how to get them to believe in you and trust you.
Yeah, well said. Cindy, you got some questions there?
Let me ask you a question, because it's I hear what you're saying, and it's more important than you can absolutely understand that you must teach them to trust you. It's funny because Alan, my husband, who played on the tour for a long time, was really good friends with Mr. Taylor from Golf World magazine, Dick Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to be really good friends, and I think part of what that was, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, is Alan could find things with Dick, and when Dick didn't print them, it showed Alan that he can say things to him that he won't blab to the world.
Right. No, it's so true.
Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it this way. I'm around these women more than anybody else in their life, really when you think about it, because, let's say there's 23 to 25 tournaments throughout the year. Obviously they don't go to all of them, but let's say, a top player goes to, let's just say for number's sake, 20 events. That's nearly half of the year.
Yeah.
They're around myself and, the staff here on the Symetra tour. So, I think you have to, everything they say and everything that they do can't be for public consumption. It just can't be, right? Because there's just so much time and so many things that they're doing that you sort of have to understand how to have a friendship and also how to have a working relationship where, if, let's say, for example, yesterday I was talking to Jackie Stolting, who was on the Big Break and, has played on the LPGA and is playing this week in Greenwood, and she was telling me that she was just hitting a tee shot and her husband's caddying for her, and she was telling me that it's their anniversary week and they rented a house on the lake, and she's really happy about the week. So if she wins this tournament, that's a great story. That
right.
She wins a tournament, it's her anniversary week, and the only reason she told me that is because we were just sort of shooting the breeze. So you have to sort of have both a friendship kind of relationship and also a professional one where, if something did happen to Jackie and I had to ask her maybe a more tough question or, a more personal question, that she'd be willing to answer it too. So you kind of have to have both.
Do you find you have to sort of find a balancing act, though, Bret, with that relationship? Like, you have to kind of use your own judgment a little bit and say, okay, this is something that they want to, get out there to the fans and that, and then there's other things that obviously there's obvious situations, but how do you sort of balance that and make sure that the image that you're projecting is what they're trying to actually do and not, sort of throw some things out there that they may not want necessarily?
Yeah, the good thing for me is that, I'm sort of a teammate of theirs, right? I mean, I work for the LPGA. I'm not, Golf Week or Golf Channel or ESPN or ABC or whatever. I'm not, and again, I don't think that, I'm not saying ESPN or any of these networks or publications are out to get these athletes, because they're not. But I'm not in a position where I want to portray them in any sort of negative light. Everything that I want to do with these professionals on the tour is in a positive light because I work for the tour. If I'm portraying them in a negative light, I'm not going to be employed very much longer. So, I think they all understand that, and I think I understand that, and I try to do whatever I can to portray them in a really positive light. And that's the really cool thing for me about working with younger athletes is I think a really good example is a gal by the name of Brittany Altamare, who won a couple weeks ago in Sarasota and is now playing on the LPGA. I remember 2 or 3 years ago when I first started on this tour, and she was a rookie at the time. She was really, I don't know if intimidated by me or just really, she didn't have a whole lot of media training in college and never really did a whole lot in high school. And, she didn't really like to do the whole media thing. And I remember, anytime I sort of showed up, she would try to walk the other way or something like that. And just really over 2 or 3 years, we've become really good friends, and she's gotten a lot more comfortable in front of the camera, talking to the media. And I was really proud of her after winning the tournament, how she handled talking with the media and the comfort she had in front of, 2 print reporters and a, TV guy and a blogger. So, I think, seeing stuff like that is really cool to me.
Part of our series of the Own Your Game series is about learning your behavior style. And so what you just mentioned, she may be really shy and unsure of herself, and you handled it magnificently, because some people, it's harder to gain their trust than others. Do you find that to be the case?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, the thing that really shocked me, Cindy, I'll be honest with you, I came from, bigger sports like baseball and basketball and football, where they get a lot more media attention and they're around people a lot in high school and college. But I was really shocked when I came to golf how little even a star player in college deals with the media and deals with, some speaking obligations. Like Brittany she was an all ACC player. She was, ACC Player of the Year at the University of Virginia, which is a, big time college program. But she did very little in the form of media in high school and college. So I think naturally she was just not that comfortable with it. So, it took a little bit of time. And, there's certain players that have these, big personalities and love to be around people and talk to people, where it's just, you go up to them, you say hi, next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you're still talking, but there's others like Brittany that, it takes a little bit of time. Who's this Bret guy? What's his role? Who is he? Why is he coming up to me? So I think all those questions probably at first were floating around her head, but it's really cool to see that now, we have this really good relationship, and she's gotten so much better around people and around the media. And now I think she's ready. If she wins a tournament on the LPGA and, there's a scrum of 5 cameras, she'll be ready.
Right.
Well, and that's also, so important, like you mentioned, that you're part of the family. So you're not, and it's not to say that ESPN and NBC and all these people, the Golf Channel, are bad. They're not bad. It's just that I'm like your brother and your sister here. You got to learn to trust me. I'm on your side. I want you to look good, so we look good. and conveying that message is really important.
Yeah, and it's, again, it just, to me, it goes back to, being surprised at, just how, different it is in college golf and amateur golf where, a lot of these players, they just, grow up, they win tournaments, they win college tournaments, but yet they don't get a whole lot of attention. So there's not always constantly people around them. And, after rounds, people want to talk to them and get autographs and all that. So I think all that stuff takes a little bit of getting used to because, look, I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't been to a whole lot of amateur golf tournaments, but I would imagine, once you're done, you get lunch with mom and dad and you go in the car and you go home. So,
yeah.
A lot of the, stuff with the fans and media, a lot of that stuff is a little bit foreign to some, even star players when they come out on tour. So, I think there's a lot more that fans don't realize that people have to get used to in the golf space when they become professionals. So that's all been really fascinating to me over the last 3 years because I would have thought that, a kid like Brittany Altamare would have, been comfortable with the autographs and the fans and the media, but, frankly, she wasn't at first.
Let me ask you a question, if I might. It's a two-part question. So your dream and goal was to be an announcer, on-air talent, and you've now shifted into almost behind-the-scenes control of what. Tell us what your job is really now and why you prefer this to being on-air. Well,
now, my major responsibility is, at least in my opinion, is promoting the players and promoting the Symetra Tour because, I'll be honest, and I think anybody that's listening knows that, the PGA Tour is king in the golf space, and, even the LPGA Tour, my employer, struggles for space, space in the media, space on social media, space anywhere in the golf world. So take that to another level down. So we're talking basically AAA women's golf. And I think if you talk to anybody on the web.com tour, they'll tell you that they struggle in the golf space too, to get on Golf Channel and to get recognized in Golf Week and all that stuff. So it's a constant battle every day to try to get this tour recognized because as you guys have, witnessed firsthand through talking to these players, they all have great stories and they all come from somewhere and they're all pretty interesting and charismatic and all that. And, my goal is to sort of promote them and at the same time promote the tour. And so that's my primary responsibility. And, I think I enjoy the on-camera stuff and doing the play-by-play, and it was a truly great experience, and I wouldn't say that I'm ruling that out as a possibility down the road. And I still do some things that sort of have components, like I do a lot of video for the tour, shooting, editing, and stuff like that, and I do a podcast for LPGAtour.com, or LPGA.com, so I still try to get some components of what I've done in the past into my current job.
Oh, that's great. So you know how to edit?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So
like yesterday, I flew around the golf course and, shot some, the signature holes here at the links at Stony Point and Greenwood, South Carolina are, the 7th hole and the 13th hole, which are both par 3s and both have water in play. So, I went around the course and, got some B-roll and put up a, quick minute-long video so, our fans hopefully can go to SymetraTour.com and check it out. Because, look, our events are not televised, right? So if you want to follow this tour, basically the two ways that you can are through the leaderboard on SymetraTour.com or through social media, and social media has become a lot more visual with pictures and videos. So that's what we try to do. But, if you're not in South Carolina or Greenwood, South Carolina, really, it's hard to get a visual of where these girls are or what the golf course looks like if you're just following on SymetraTour.com. So I think that's where we try to provide that visual as best we can with the resources we have.
That's
so now
fantastic.
I have to interrupt for a second. Tell me where this thing is, because I'm coming down there to play in the Legends Tour event that's in conjunction with the Symetra Tour this weekend, and I haven't seen the course. So where do I see these two par threes?
If you go to SymetraTour.com and go to videos, you can see it. And, I saw you were in the field, Cindy. That's funny. When I was looking at the Legends Tour field, I saw you were in it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be talking to her in a day or so when I looked at the field. But, they're beautiful. The par 3 13th is actually, it's right on Lake Greenwood. So the bottom tee box on Sunday is literally surrounded on two sides, if you can picture it, by water. So straight out in front, if you were to take 3 steps from where you tee off, you'll fall into the lake forward. And then if you take 3 steps to your right, you'll fall into the lake as well. So don't do that, is my recommendation to you. But the really cool thing, too, is that on Sunday, or really all weekend, people will dock their boats right by the tee box, and it sort of has become this, like, really cool party hole.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's fun. You'll love it.
Okay, so I'm on the Symetra Tour website, and I went to Sights and Sounds around the links at Stony Point.
Yeah.
So do I click on that?
Yep. So watch that video, and maybe
right,
halfway through you'll get a look at hole 13.
Am I going to be playing that hole with clenched butt cheeks?
What's that?
Am I going to be playing that hole with clenched butt cheeks?
Well, you might be. I don't know what your your pressure level is, so I've never seen you golf, but you might be.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Bret, just in case Cindy steps off the front or the side of the tee, I want to make sure you get some B-roll of that, and you can send it into the show, and we'll have that. Bret, let me just ask you very quickly. We only got a few minutes left here, and then we got to let you go, and I know you're busy and that.
No problem.
We had Mike Nichols on the show a couple of years ago, a colleague of yours at the Symetra Tour, and he was certainly looking forward to some growth and a lot of collaboration with some of the other tours. And Cindy just mentioned with the Legends Tour. What do you see happening with the Symetra Tour in the next 5 to 10 years? If you forecast it, what are you excited to see coming up, and where do you see the direction of the tour going?
Well, I'll say this, Ted and Cindy, that, just in my 2+ years or 3 years, let's call it, with the tour, we've gone from, and I take no credit for this, but we've gone from 0 $200,000 plus events to 5. And this week the gals are playing for $250,000, which is the largest total purse in the history of the tour. So the winner this week will earn $37,500, and I'd say for a minor league women's tour, that's a pretty respectable figure. I think a lot of people would love to earn, nearly $40,000 in an entire year. So, I think that's a very respectable figure for a minor league women's tour. I think to answer your question, long term, I think the goal from the LPGA and the Symetra Tour is to become the proving ground. Not a proving ground, but the proving ground to play on the LPGA. Right now, if you look at the top players in the world, Lydia Ko never played on the Symetra Tour. Hana Jang never played on the Symetra Tour. Se-Young Kim never played on the Symetra Tour, so on and so forth. Now, there are a lot of people that did play on the tour, Brooke Henderson, Jarena Pillar, and I can go on and on. But I think at some point, and I think, it's coming in the near future, and certainly in that 5-10 year range, the Symetra Tour has to become the place and the only place in which players can go from wherever they're playing, whether it be in Korea or Japan or wherever, but it's got to become the tour. And I think, obviously purses have to go up and stuff like that, but it also has to attract, players that are playing in Europe, right? Like, right now, a lot of those players play on the Ladies European Tour, and we've seen an influx of players that were playing on that tour that have come over to play on the Symetra Tour, but I think we need to see more and more of that in the near future.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Bret, you're doing a fantastic job for the Symetra Tour, and Cindy and I certainly appreciate all that you do to help us here with our program and getting some of the great players. And I'm going to throw this there now. Save me sending you an email. Line us up with one for next week if you wouldn't mind. We'd love to have another great young lady on here and showcase her on the Women of Golf show. So we appreciate all that you do.
All right, cool. Yeah, thank you guys so much. You guys do a great job for our young players, giving them an opportunity to speak and to learn how to, do this in an engaging way. So I really appreciate that. And Cindy, don't fall into the lake on 13, and I'll come up and say hi to you.
Okay, honey. I'll see you this weekend. Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye, guys. Thanks, Bret. All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, that was Bret Lasky, Senior Coordinator for Media at the Symetra Tour. Great conversation. He's doing a fantastic job of helping these young ladies, and we're certainly very honored to have him on the show this morning. Cindy, let me just do some quick introduction here, and I see Kathy is also ready to come on board, so we'll bring her on just a second. As I mentioned, the second half of the show, LPGA professional Kathy Hart Wood is going to be joining us. She is the owner and creator of NowICanGolf.com, which is an online instructional course for women, and also currently teaches golf at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club in New Jersey. Kathy's insightful and top-notch teaching skills have made her a celebrated teacher. She has an extensive golf background, both as a competitor and instructor, and after a successful junior and collegiate golf career, she traveled the world competing not only on the European, but the Korean, Australian, and South African tours as well. As an instructor, she has taught in the Nicholas Lick Golf Schools and the Golf for Women magazine golf school. She was a contributing editor, in fact, for Golf for Women magazine for several years and has published many instructional articles in newspapers, magazines. And in addition, she has been featured on the cover of Women and Golf magazine, Golf for Women magazine, Colorado Avid Golfer, and New Jersey Golf magazine and Player magazine. And since '96, she has consistently been voted one of Golf for Women magazine's top 50 instructors. And in 2010 and 12, she was Golf Digest honored her as one of America's top 50 women teachers. And Edwin Watts in 2013 recognized her as one of the top instructors in the country. And also in 2014 and 2015, she was ranked as one of the favorite teachers in the state of New Jersey through Golf Styles magazine. So without further hesitation, let's bring on our very special guest, Kathy Hart Wood.
Good morning, Kathy.
Hello, Cindy. How are you guys?
We're doing very well.
The one thing you didn't mention, Ted, is that guess where she's from?
Oh, yes, that's
Buffalo.
right.
Only the best.
I think that's on the bottom. I do mention Buffalo. I love Buffalo.
Yeah, we all love Buffalo.
Well, I figured we already had one from Buffalo on the show. I didn't need to mention it. No, actually, there was just so many accolades on there. We would use up all the time just reading them out. But quite a repertoire, Kathy, of accomplishments, and we appreciate that. Let me just jump in real quick here, and then Cindy, I'm going to let you start off here with Kathy. A couple things. Kathy, we're going to give you an opportunity to talk about your new program, NowICanGolf.com. But Cindy has been doing for the last several weeks an Own Your Game series, which is part of her Own Your Game Academy that she does. And we're going to throw some things in there and get your perspective as well. And this particular week, we're sort of wrapping up the series with the post game. So we'd like to get your thoughts on how people should handle their post round activities and what they need to learn from that. But Cindy, go ahead and let's start off.
Well, Kathy, I'm so excited about your NowICanGolf.com, the online instructional course for women, because it is so needed. And I think, my perspective is you have created a safe place for people to learn how to play. Can you tell us why you created this?
Well, I mean, actually, that has a lot to do with it. I have had this, I guess, kind of unusual opportunity. I had to look back at it as being an opportunity of every place that I went and I taught. I looked back and I noticed that I was at startup clubs or new clubs, and I just consistently had beginners. And my husband is a well-ranked instructor, and everybody was about teaching the tour player and the good golfer. And I'm like, man, I keep getting all these beginners, and I finally just really embraced them, and now they're my niche. I really am gotten fine-tuned how to teach beginners. I just get an inordinate amount of them, and I love them. And one of the biggest hurdles for women getting into the game, as you clearly know this, Cindy, is they're very intimidated, and there's a lot of information to learn. And I really make a very fun and light environment, and I fine-tuned how to get them out on the golf course. And I really do. I'm not a method teacher by any means, but I do have kind of a program that gets them out and playing and on their own out on the golf course as quickly as I can. And that's my biggest thing is I really try and make everybody comfortable. I actually just got an email. It's funny that you said that I'm sitting at my club on a dreary day in New Jersey, and I have 6 ladies who are supposed to show up at 10 o'clock to take a clinic. And so it'll be interesting to see how many show up. But one of the emails that I got was a lady who wasn't able to make it today, but she thanked me for taking the intimidation out of the game, and she capitalized that. And that's kind of my forte. But a lot of that is very easy for me to do in person because, I'm relatively light. I joke around a lot, and I tried to figure out how I could transfer that to a video format because I really can only reach who's in my environment. And I noticed that there's a lot of people that I run into who, man, I wish I could find an instructor where I am, or I really just wish I knew what to do before I went to the golf course, and I wish I could take a lesson from a woman. So I tried to, putting golf instruction into like a classroom kind of online module type of format. It's not very good for someone who's really already playing the game because they know a lot of that information, and they might be doing something in particular that it might not resonate with them. I think that's one of the problem with golf videos. Or golf tips online is they work for. They might work for only 10% of the people who listen to it, and the other people who apply it, it might actually not make them any better, which I think you can appreciate. So, but they're always looking for information online. I'm sorry?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I
totally agree.
Yeah, so I've written a lot of articles over the years in magazines too, and when I wrote those articles, when they asked me to write an article, I'm always like putting in a disclaimer, like, but if you're doing this, that won't work. Don't do it. I didn't want people to read an article and get worse because, if they're working on their pivot, but they're, a reverse pivot or they're doing something totally different, they might exaggerate. There's a million things people can take out of context. But for magazines, they're always looking, well, you got to give us something new. You got to give us something, something out there, something that we haven't heard before. And that just didn't resonate with my integrity. I didn't want to create something crazy just so that I would get published in a magazine. So that's so anyway. So I embraced me having beginners all these years, and being able to teach people from the beginning is actually something you can do online. And because I do keep it pretty simple, and as long as you're staying in the parameters that I set, you really can't kind of get worse. I mean, it's always nice to have a set of eyes. And I don't say that you can't, don't ever, I encourage people to go get instruction wherever they are, but this is something that they can get comfortable with. They can go out to the golf course and have a little knowledge going in. I think it's really great for women in business. I have a passion for that, for helping women, move their way up the corporate ladder. I just read a statistic that said that executives who play golf make 17% more money. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really helpful for women. You know this as well too. It's really helpful for women in their jobs. There's a lot of business done on the golf course, and I think with our busy lives, this is an easy way that they can get started with the game. And then the other kind of niche of people that I teach a lot is empty nesters, which I am about to be. Can you believe that, Cindy?
No, we are getting old, but let's talk about it.
Let me just.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, what I was going to say. Let me just interject real quick.
Sure.
Kathy, on a point that you made, and I think it's very valid, and Cindy, I know you concur with this about videos and things like that, and I like the approach that you've just discussed that you're taking with your online program. One of the problems that I've always seen with a lot of the videos is they're very generic, and
right.
What I mean by that is they're trying to put a product out that they think is going to appeal to the masses, but as we all know as instructors, everybody's swing is unique and different, and what may work for one may not work for somebody else. And you're right, they try to let's come out with everything new, but the truth of the matter is when you look at most of the articles and a lot of the video that's coming out, it's just sort of a reshuffling of the same thing, and there isn't really a lot of new things coming out. You might get some swing theories or methodologies that might be slightly different, but essentially it's the same information. And I think this has helped to confuse a lot of golfers out there. They're getting these messages coming out saying, well, all you have to do is transfer this and do that. And that's not necessarily true, because you swing differently than I do, and Cindy swings differently than you do, and so on and so forth. And we have to be able to work with each individual as an individual and not lump them into one big group.
Yeah, exactly, which is part of the problem with trying to take, instruction online. Just like you said, I mean, golf tips are, great. I have students. I have this one guy I teach. I teach predominantly women, but I have probably about 20% of my students are men. I have this one guy who every week he came to me and goes, all right, so I watched this YouTube video, and so I've been trying to do that. I'm like, what? Why are you doing that?
So much for downloading the 20.
Oh.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, that was me. I pushed a button I shouldn't have pushed.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, you're saying about.
Thing.
Yeah, you were saying about a video or about watching a YouTube video.
Yeah, so every week my student would come out and he would tell me that he tried something else that week. He listened to this other video, or I would say something. He goes, yeah, that's what so and so says on YouTube, and so basically, you're just chasing something. It's like treading water, in my opinion. I say if you're going to keep just chasing different YouTube and try different stuff every week, you're not really getting any better. It's like treading water. You're just on a treadmill. You're just kind of staying in the same spot, and you're confusing yourself. Plus I told him, I'm like, why are you paying me? I mean, that's if you're going to take lessons on YouTube, then why are you asking me for my opinion? So it ends up confusing people a lot when they go and they're listening to someone is just trying to repackage it. They're trying to say something a little bit differently. And, as instructors, I tell people I have a Rolodex of ways of saying the same thing. It's the same. I want to tell you the same thing, but I can tell you it, on card 144, I will tell you it different than on card 12. But I still want you to do this with your pivot or some, whatever. But the part that is difficult, is just to keep it really kind of simple. And there's no really recreating the wheel in the golf swing. You got to do basic stuff. And I want to get you out and playing, get your ball up in the air and get going on the golf course. And then, if you want to go watch YouTube and listen to your husband and the guy next to you on the range, have at it. But it's not my advice, but I want to get you out there and playing. So, yeah, there's plenty to confuse people. We listen to it all the time as instructors, all the different things that are going through people's heads.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point. Kathy, you're right. There's a lot of instruction out there, and this is not to criticize. I mean, everybody's welcome to their own opinion. One of the things that bothers me a little bit, and I've said this many times on air, is I'm all for technology. I think there's a lot of great technology out there that has helped instructors, but I think one of the dangers that's happened in the industry, and maybe you've experienced this a little bit from what you've observed as well. But there are some instructors out there that are actually overwhelming their students with this technology instead of using it for what it's meant to be used for. In other words, to help the instructor get a better understanding, they're using it to sort of translate that information to the students, and the students are just, their eyes are rolling back like slot machines in their head, trying to figure out what the instructor's talking about because they haven't been trained on the equipment. How do you find a balance with technology, or do you use much technology in your teaching?
Yeah, I video. I think visual aids are awesome. So many times you might tell somebody that they have too much wrist hinge, and they don't believe it until they see it, right? Kind of thing. So I think video is awesome in that perspective. I love visual aids. We just had an academy built here at Fiddler's Elbow, and it has 3 TrackMans inside, and I really haven't used that with my students. Like I said, I teach a lot of beginners, but it really doesn't. I mean, they don't even understand what they're doing, let alone me showing them, where their path is, what their club face looks like. That would just, their head would, figuratively explode, I think, if I told them that. But I've also run into somebody who uses a lot of TrackMan as a student, and he was telling me how much he loved his TrackMan. And he's like, oh, my gosh, it's so fun. I love taking lessons with it. I love the instructor. He's showing me my numbers. And I said, that is awesome. I said, it's great. Certain minds love that stuff, and other ones are like, I don't even let me look at it. But the key question that I asked him at a Christmas party was, I said, so how much has your handicap gone down? And he looked at me and just blinked. And it wasn't a trick question. I was being very sincere. And he goes, well, I'm not playing any better. Just my numbers are getting.
I love you.
I was like, really? I'm like, all right. I'm like, that makes no sense to me, you know. So it doesn't teach people how to score. You know, to me, when I teach my students, you want to go out there, and if you're not having fun, and if you can't get your ball to get from point A to point B in the least amount of strokes for you, then I don't know what you're doing it for. I mean, are you doing it so that your numbers are better on a TrackMan screen, or are you doing it to go out and, lower your score and have a good time? So for me, I want to make sure that my students are having a good time, because if they're not having a good time, they're not going to play this game. I have a bunch of people who quit the sport because it's hard.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I tell my students, which is like kind of a little bit of an epiphany for them, it's like, if you got to find your 100-yard club, and for men it might be 130. Find your 100-yard club, and if you can hit it 100 yards, you could 300-yard shots on a par 5. You'd be on the green in 3, and if you two-putt, that's a 5. You know, bogey golf. 5 is bogey golf. Bogey golf is 90. You know, and they look at me like, but I have to hit my driver. I'm like, you can't hit your driver, so no, you don't have to hit your driver. I mean, I don't think people realize that, you know, that the game is a strategy. You know, how do you get from here to there? Like, what do you have in your bag that can get you from here to there? So I want my students to get out there and be able to hit it, 60, 70, 100 yards, and you can play golf. It's not, you don't have to wait till you can hit a driver 200 yards. That's not what it's about. And I think that revelation and epiphany is really resonating with a lot of my students. So they can get out there and, start playing and having fun.
Yeah, and thank you by the way, for making my point about technology. You said it exactly right, and thank you for making that point, because it's something, and again, I'm not trying to bash technology. I think there's a place for it when it's used in its proper context, but there are some out there that I think that are getting caught up in the technology too much, to the point where it's actually not producing the results that they really ideally would like to get. It's just a matter of, maybe adjusting numbers. And the gentleman that you spoke to at the Christmas party made that point very eloquently. Cindy, let's get Kathy in on the Own Your Game series. As I mentioned earlier, this is sort of the final wrap-up of it, but it's talking about the post-game. So let's talk about that. Explain to the listeners out there how important the post-game analysis or evaluation is for golfers.
Well, let me just back up for a minute.
Okay, yeah, you go ahead.
We did not reveal how I know Kathy. I've known Kathy since she was a kid, forever. Yeah. And Kathy's father, Chuck Hart, was the head professional at a country club 20 miles away from me. And my dad passed away when I was a junior in college. And I took lessons from Kathy's dad, Chuck Hart. And I would work at Wanaka Country Club, and her father was instrumental in helping me, number one, qualify for the LPGA Tour, and number two, helping me find sponsors. And Kathy's brother, Dudley, is a PGA Tour winner. And he's younger than Kathy, and he's, I think he was like 8 or 9.
You didn't need to say that.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm kidding.
Whatever. And in fact, I'm very proud of the fact that I got Kathy drunk for the first time when she was about 14.
Oh, my God, I didn't think you were going to say that.
Well, why not?
I know.
I'm very proud of that. It's funny because I gotta say this, too. I saw Kelly Ledbetter, who was Kelly Fuchs, in college, and I hadn't seen her in like 25 years, right? And I totally forgot this, and she's married to David Ledbetter, right? And we were really good friends in college, and the first time I had seen her in 25 years, she goes, oh, my God, I remember that summer I came to your house, and you got me so drunk, and I threw up all night. I'm like, wow, I've done this for more than one person.
Oh, my God, that's that's a habit now. Yeah, but I thank you for starting a wonderful pattern in my life.
You're welcome. I quit. I learned my lesson. I got sick of being hungover. But anyway, so the post-game is the end of our series, and what we say here is wise leaders and elite performers all reflect on their performances to understand what they've done well and where there could be improvements. those who are humble enough to admit their opportunities to improve shall always reach new levels of success. So give us your little touch on that statement.
Well, yeah, I think, as a player, one of the big things is that you see good players, they go out and they do exactly that, like what worked that day, what didn't work that day, and then you work on that. You improve or you work on your weakest part of your game. And I think the other thing to take away from it is to make sure that you leave the golf course and don't beat yourself up for anything that went bad or poorly or that you were upset about, because that's not going to transfer great until your next round or if you go and practice after the round. So as players, we would habitually go and practice after a round, which a lot of times amateurs don't have a chance to do that. But because they have more of a life than a tour player does. So that I noticed is that most, and I had a whole series on this, is I had them work on the weakest part of their game. And people don't like to work on the weakest part of their game. It's kind of like doing a stretch on a part of the body that doesn't, that hurts, right? You don't want to stretch your hamstring. That hurts. I'll stretch something that's, that I'm flexible in. So you got to be uncomfortable and go to the part of the game that you're the weakest on, or you're not going to get any better. And for a lot of people, that's their short game. I'll start a lesson. I'll say, so what are your strong parts of your game and what are the weakest parts of your game? And when they tell me, I get, well, I'm not a very good putter, but I really want to work on my full swing. I'm like, okay, but but if you're not a very good putter, why wouldn't you? Well, I can do that another time. People don't give that enough importance. They're like, I want to pay you to watch me hit the ball better. So I think that's a big thing, is to be honest with yourself on really where you are in the weakest part of your game. Annika Sorenstam was very big on taking her statistics down, and I mean, she really tracked it. And she went and worked on the weakest part of her game, and clearly she got a lot better doing that. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were going towards on that, Cindy, but that's what I observe with people in their post game.
Oh, I totally agree. It's if you really want to improve your performance, you have to be willing to look in the mirror, reveal the truth, expose the elephants, and work on it.
Exactly.
And if not, you're in denial land.
Exactly. And for most people, it's the reason that they're weak in that area is because they don't like doing that shot, whether it's chipping or bunker or pitching, or it's usually a short game shot to be, I think we all know that. Like, a lot of people aren't super awesome around the greens, and that's where they could shave most of the shots.
Kathy, do you think, let me just ask a question here, because you raised a very interesting point when you mentioned Annika Sorenstam. Do you think that a lot of amateurs, part of the reason that they're reluctant to work on some of those areas that we know that they should be working on is because they say to themselves, well, I'm not a tour player. I'm never going to be a tour player, so I just want to be able to hit the ball decent. Like there's kind of a disconnect, if you will, if that's the right way of putting it, that they know they're never going to be as good as Sally out on the LPGA tour. So, why do I need to work on that? If I wanted to play on tour, I would do that. Do you think that they just want to go out and not embarrass themselves, so they'll work on the areas they think that they need to, as opposed to what we feel they should be working on?
Sometimes you miss a chip, it's embarrassing. It's not as embarrassing as if you top it per se,
right.
necessarily. And you definitely want to get rid of those shots that don't work, right? Golf is a game of misses, right? So if you got a really bad miss in the fairway, yeah, you need to work on that. But I also think there is a little aspect to that. What resonated with me when you said that was that people, how hard are you willing to work at it?
Right.
Kind of thing. So, and do I really want to work that hard? I'm like, do I want to put in an extra time and get my, how much better can it get? I don't think they really appreciate that if they put in a little extra, very good practice, right? Focused practice, not just going out there and whacking balls for a, for a time frame, that it can improve. And it's not one or two shots here or there, or 3 or 4 shots. For some people, they can really save a lot of shots. Adds up. It's not necessarily putting in the same amount of time as clearly as a tour player. It's just putting in some good quality 15 minutes. It's not that big a deal. But it's kind of like, what we know we're supposed to do even with our health and our bodies. People like, I want to be in better shape, but are you willing to put in the time to do it? And it's not really that big of a commitment. It's not as big of a commitment, I think, as people think.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think a lot of people, it's like dieting. Everybody's, well, I've tried this, I've tried that, but they don't really. If you want to be honest,
Right.
they'll try it for a short period of time, but when they realize, gosh, this is difficult, or this is taking more effort than what I anticipated, then they start to cheat a little bit, and then of course they're not going to see the results that they thought they were going to see, and well, this doesn't work, and then they go on and find something else. Everybody's looking for, unfortunately, in the golf industry, they're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the instant cure, and it doesn't exist.
Sure.
And if you ask any player that's ever walked the face of the earth that's played professional golf, from yourselves right up to Nancy Lopez, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, whoever, they will all tell you the same. You have to put the effort and the practice in. And I think one of the differences between your amateur players and your professional players is when an amateur goes out, they just go out and practice. They'll hit balls, they'll beat balls, whatever you want to call it. The professionals practice with a purpose. They go out there with a specific agenda in mind, and that's why they get better in their practice sessions, because there's an agenda at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. And in my course, see how I circled back around right there? That was pretty good. I didn't do that actually on purpose, but I did. But in my course, one of the things that I do, I really make people kind of go through, like, look, if you're going to go out and practice this way. Go through these steps to make sure you're creating the swing that you need to create. And I emphasize that because and I emphasize that with my students. Look, if you miss 2 balls in a row, you need to stop and take a practice swing. Stop and check your fundamentals. And I think a lot of times, we clearly have all watched people on the range, miss 10 balls in a row, and really they're ingraining missing 10 balls in a row. So until you stop that pattern and really have a focus and practice with a purpose, you're really just like I said, treading water. You're not getting any better. You might be getting worse.
Well, and the other thing too, and Cindy, I know that you've experienced this as well with students, I'm sure, is you notice how a lot of them will never practice their pre-shot routine on the practice tee. When they get out on the golf course, they're standing behind, they're looking at their target, maybe a couple of waggles, a swing or two, whatever. But they don't do the same thing on the practice tee and sort of perfect that. And if you watch every golf professional, whether it's at an event or in a practice session, they go through their pre-shot routine and even their post-shot routine every single time. And there's a reason for it.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Again, it's, how good do you want to be? And why are you here? What are you looking for? And are you willing to put in the work? That's what it boils down to. And if you are, you can definitely improve.
Right. Yeah,
exactly.
And some people are content shooting 110, and that's great. There's no judgment in that. You don't need to play better if you're happy at that spot. But there's plenty of people who want to play better, and so if you do want to play better, then it's definitely take the time. Don't waste time. I mean, there's the time to do it is now, and to be effective is now. Don't wait 4 years and realize if I only practice better, you just hit away 4 years. So. I definitely agree with that, and I think everybody can stand to shave a few shots off their game.
Sure, exactly.
No matter how good you are, or who you are, or how long you've played, there's always room to get better.
Exactly.
Well, Kathy, unfortunately, we've got to wrap up here, but we want to thank you for coming on, and we're going to have you come back, if nothing else, to dish a little dirt on Cindy Miller, since she was so gracious and laying a little bit. So we're going to have you back on here, and we'll talk a little golf. Of course, we've got to talk a little golf just to make it official. But we're going to let you spill a few beans about Cindy Miller, of course, when you come back on. But again, just let everybody know where they can go and get that information with your program. Where do they go?
So, Dad, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was great, Cindy. It was great talking to you. And I look forward to catching up. So, so my website is nowiCanGolf.com, and actually I have a discount for your listeners. If they want to text I Can Do This to 44222, they'll get a discount, and they'll get on my email list and get some golf tips and things like that. So it's nowiCanGolf.com, and that's Can Do This to 44222. So, I just really, if you know anybody who's getting ready to start the game, or some people who could use some help, I think it's a great resource, and I'm constantly improving on it. So I'm sure it'll be adding more material.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate
awesome.
you, Kathy, you coming on the show. And as all kidding aside, you're welcome to come back anytime and share your thoughts and your experience with our audience. We appreciate you giving of that time. And as we say on the show, go out and have fun, enjoy this game, because that's really what it's about. It's about having fun. It's not necessarily about mastering the perfect golf swing or hitting the perfect shot. It's just about having fun. And there's a lot of great teach professionals out there that can help accomplish that, like our special guest, Kathy Hartwood, I'm sorry. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning, and have a great week.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Another great show, great guest, and Cindy, we're going to get some dirt on you, my dear. So
there's plenty to be found.
I'm sure there is. Well, listen, Cindy, good luck. You said you're playing in the tournament this weekend. So good luck with that, and we'll talk a little bit about how things went, and don't take those extra steps on that par 3 13 at the club there, just in case. We don't want you going in the drink, as it were. But we want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning on the Women of Golf show. We do really, Cindy and I do really appreciate all of the listeners that faithfully tune in from all around the world, and we hope you'll continue to join in. And we'll hope you spread the word and let them know, your friends and family know that this is a great show that showcases a lot of very talented young and older women that play this great game that Cindy and I are involved with. So we hope you come back and join us next week here on the Women of Golf show. And if you're interested in purchasing Cindy's Own Your Game program, you can go online onto cindymillergolf.com, or you can go through this show notes here, and there's a link there that you can click, and it'll take you directly there. And I strongly suggest you do it. We enjoy bringing this series, and we just brought you a little snippet of each of the segments along the way. To get the full program, of course, you need to go in and purchase that, but we appreciate you tuning in and listening in. And Cindy, we appreciate you always for bringing some great information to the show.
Thanks, Ted. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks, everybody.